Hey, welcome to Life After Nursing School. I'm your host, Caroline Dana, aka Nurse Coach Caroline, and I'm here to help you, the new nurse, thrive in your career. As a former nurse recruiter, nurse manager, and now your personal new nurse career coach, I'm obsessed with making sure you don't just survive your first couple of years at the bedside. I want you to absolutely rock them. From the challenges to the triumphs, I'll be right here with you, giving you the real-world advice and support that you need to shine. Whether you're in nursing school getting ready for life after, or you're already out there in nurse life feeling overwhelmed or even questioning your confidence, I've got your back. I'll be sharing tips, tricks, resources, and strategies that are just for you. We'll dive into everything from landing that dream nursing job to slaying imposter syndrome, and most importantly, how to keep that spark alive and stay the vibrant and amazing nurse that you are. So if you're ready to tackle the things nursing school did not cover, like how to build a career, trust yourself, and keep your passion strong, then get comfortable because we are about to dive in and make nurse life the best life. Welcome back. I know this podcast is titled Life After Nursing School, but I just had to make an episode about studying. Last summer, I decided to go live on TikTok every week, and let me tell you, followers were constantly asking me for study tips, whether it was for anatomy and physiology or pharmacology or the TEAS entrance exam or even the NCLEX. Study tips seemed to be a constant question, so I figured, what a great episode topic. Today, I want to cover how to best prepare for an upcoming exam, a few different study techniques, and of course, I will share what worked for me when I was in nursing school. Whether you are studying for a nursing school exam or preparing for the NCLEX, these study tips are universal and not specific to the type of test. So pick and choose which of these tactics might work best for you. I also want to add that I created a free download called Study Playbook, which lists the study tips, hacks, techniques mentioned in this episode so that you can sit back and listen rather than having to take notes. So head to the show notes after you listen to this episode and download your free study playbook. Okay, when I think back to nursing school, I remember all the time I spent studying. I would frequently spend time on the quiet floor of the library or at a local coffee shop with my nursing books and notes. I want to be transparent with you. I had to work very hard when it came to studying. The material did not come naturally to me, and some courses like chemistry and pharmacology required me to work even harder. Now in my 30s, I have been diagnosed with ADHD, which probably would have been helpful to know in nursing school, but that's neither here nor there. A big mistake that I had to learn quickly and hope to help you avoid is falling into the trap of doing what your peers are doing. I found myself making flashcards and study outlines because, well, my friends were doing that and they got good grades. But guess what? That didn't work out so well for me. The material would not stick, and I just was not able to comprehend it in a way that actually made sense for me. I found that I needed to actually lean into many different senses when I was learning new material, which I now know sounds a little odd. To start learning new material, I would first read the textbook ahead of lecture, and I would highlight the textbook, the things that I found important. This was a great visual for me. Highlighting the written information seemed to help me digest the material a bit more effectively. Then I would learn that same material in lecture from a nursing professor. As I listened to the professor, I would take notes on a printed copy of the PowerPoint while in class. In this setting, I was hearing the material from the professor and learning it through an auditory method. But it seemed taking notes while listening to the professor explain the material made the information stick. While taking notes in class during lecture, I would star things that the professor would emphasize, or sometimes they would hint at something being on a future exam, or I would even star material that I found confusing and I wanted to make sure that I would spend some time reviewing. After lecture, I would handwrite a study outline. This handwritten method really helped me with repetition, and I also highlighted my own study guide as well. When reviewing the highlighted study guide I had created, I would then speak the material out loud. For example, I would try to explain a concept verbally because that would always test my knowledge and my true understanding of the material. This is actually a learned method. I didn't know this, but it is a learned method known as self-explanation. What is self-explanation? Well, it's a technique where learners explain concepts to themselves as they work through them. This involves verbalizing or thinking through the material to make sense of it. Self-explanation helps reinforce understanding by engaging the learner in the process of clarifying and organizing their thoughts. Lastly, depending on the resources available, I would quiz myself. So I would take practice tests and I would always spend time reading the rationale. Practice tests, flashcards, and self quizzing are ways to recall information and determine how well we know the information. This technique is considered a retrieval practice. Retrieval practice involves actively recalling information from memory rather than simply reviewing it passively. This strengthens neural connections and improves long-term retention. It also is a great way to identify knowledge gaps or material that you may need to go back and study. So let me just recap my study process for you because I know it was a long one. I started with reading the textbook ahead and highlighting the material. Then I would take notes in lecture while the professor was teaching the material, making sure to note any hard to understand topics, major concepts that maybe the professor emphasized or even hinted at being on a future test. Post lecture, I would create my own handwritten study guide and highlight again within it. I would then talk through concepts out loud to test my level of understanding as well as my ability to recall the material. Lastly, I would take practice quizzes or quiz myself to help address any knowledge gaps. It was a lengthy process that utilized visual, auditory, and handwritten learning techniques, as well as self-explanation and retrieval study practices. Phew, what a process, but it was one that worked for me. My point is, find what works for you. If you are a visual learner, maybe you need to lean on resources like YouTube or Google Images. If you are good at memorizing, flashcards may be your thing. What is important to remember is that nursing exams typically cover a large amount of material, and it's important that you understand the best learning styles or study processes for you so you can work through that large amount of material efficiently and have time to cover it all. Now, when it comes to NCLEX, there are many study techniques and tools out there, but again, it's crucial that you know the type of learning support and method that works best for you. I am currently an affiliate with the study preparation company called Memetrics. They offer resources to study for the NCLEX for RNs and LPNs, as well as entry exams like HESI and TEAS exams. The reason I stand behind this resource is that they offer so many methods of learning the information. They have video lessons for visual learners. They have virtual flashcards for those that like to memorize and test their knowledge. They have practice quizzes and they have practice exams with rationales. The practice exams, again, are a great way to test the areas you know and identify what areas you need to go back and review. I'm not going to lie. When the company approached me to be an affiliate, I was hesitant. I've heard of more popular companies, but I was not familiar with Memetrics. I asked for access to their program so I could give it a try myself, and honestly, it is really cool. I actually found myself about 45 minutes into an NCLEX practice exam before I realized, wait a minute, what am I doing? I've taken this exam and there are plenty of other things that I should be doing. I will add a link to the show notes as well as 20% off discount code for you if this sounds like a resource that you could use. I also appreciate this study program because it's much cheaper than many of the others. Unfortunately, 12 years ago, when I was preparing for the NCLEX, there weren't many self-paced online resources with multiple learning methods like Memetrics. So instead, I drove up to the Berkshires for a 3-day, although it could have been 5-day, I don't remember, review event. Participants sat in a lecture hall and the program director reviewed the material with us. In some ways, it was great being in person. It forced me to stay on a strict review schedule to learn the material, and I was able to review the information in a short amount of time. I know that if I were left to my own choices or my own devices, it would have taken me a much longer time to review all of the NCLEX material. Now let's pivot and talk about planning and time management when it comes to studying. Now, most of us have other responsibilities in life when we are going through nursing school, not just being a student. For me, at the time, I was a fall and spring semester college athlete, and I worked per diem as a patient care technician. I also understand I was quite privileged to be able to cut back on work, but still, I filled my time with other responsibilities. In order to allocate the appropriate time needed to study, I had to plan ahead and be organized. And something tells me you would benefit from this too. My best advice is to start planning at the beginning of each semester. Typically, on the first day of class, you are given a syllabus that outlines the class schedule, including important dates for major exams and other important assignments. Once you are given this resource, take some time to look at your other non nursing related schedule. This includes your work schedule, maybe your mom's schedule, sports schedule, whatever responsibility it is that you are juggling. I always utilize a planner that included a month view as well as a weekly view. Don't laugh, but I used to color coordinate my schedules with certain color pen ink. For example, I would plug in my cross country and track schedule in the color blue. Then I would add my work schedule in red and exam dates and major assignments in green. As I mentioned, I'm a visual learner, and color coordinating my schedule allowed me to easily anticipate what the week or month ahead looked like. Once these things were laid out on a visual schedule, I would start to block off chunks of time before exams to dedicate to studying. Physically blocking off this time was a visual reminder to me to refrain from filling any of the free time with other things. If you have a job, restrict yourself from picking up extra hours that week or request a day or two off if possible. Reserve childcare if needed for that week. Book appointments and social engagements the week after the exam. It's important to plan ahead. Looking at the week leading up to an exam, can you find pockets of time that you can dedicate to a study session? It is suggested that studying is more effective when broken into shorter study sessions or chunks of time. Long study sessions can lead to cognitive fatigue and decreased productivity. So find pockets of time, anywhere from 1 to 4 hours within your schedule, to dedicate to studying. Once you have determined these study sessions, designate each one to a different topic or material for the upcoming exam. Once you have your study session for the week or two planned out, prepare ahead. Orchestrate childcare if needed. Take PTO if possible. Go grocery shopping before. Get your laundry done. Are there other assignments that are due during the week of your exam that you could potentially do ahead of time? Getting organized will help with your level of stress and also make you more efficient with your time during that study week. As they say, fail to prepare and prepare to fail. In addition to planning the study week ahead, setting boundaries during that week is another tool to help increase your productivity and time management. An important boundary in this day and age is limiting time scrolling on social media. Make sure your study sessions are free from distraction. Consider putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, and let your family and friends know that this week you will be busy studying and might not be available for phone conversations or social gatherings. This may sound harsh, but if you are surrounded by those that truly love you and want to support you, they will respect this boundary and cheer you on. Although it is ideal to limit distraction, I have found white noise or meditation type music or even classical music helps me stay engaged. Whereas when I listen to music that I sing along to, maybe pop music, I find my mind wanders much more. Also, I want to take a moment to say, lean into your study preferences. I prefer to study alone, and I prefer to sit for a longer period of time in the morning. This was when I felt my best mentally, and I could easily get into the zone, also known as the flow state of mind. I first learned about flow state from a podcast episode focused on productivity with peak performance expert Stephen Kotler a few years ago. Flow state describes a mental state of deep immersion and focus where a person is fully engaged in an activity and experiences a heightened sense of control, enjoyment, and energy. The experience is marked by loss of self-consciousness, where a person is so absorbed in the task that they lose track of time, space, and even their physical needs. Basically, the flow state represents a state where the brain operates at its peak efficiency, optimizing cognitive function. If able to get into the flow state, studying or learning concepts is much easier and efficient. There are a few ways to help yourself enter a flow state while studying. First, set achievable goals for each study session. Minimize distraction. Focus your attention on one thing at a time. Create intrinsic motivation. Be physically and mentally ready, meaning well rested, nourished, and hydrated. And develop flow triggers, like listening to specific music every time you study, or perform a specific warm up routine before you study. These triggers can allow us to jump back into flow state much quicker. The more you practice these strategies and become familiar with your own flow triggers, the easier it becomes to access the highly productive and enjoyable state. In addition to practicing flow state strategies, try utilizing the Pomodoro technique as it may benefit your study efforts as well. How it works, let's chat about that. First, choose your study task. Identify the material you need to cover for your study session. Then set a timer for 25 minutes. This timer can be on your phone or an app or even a traditional timer. Focus entirely on your study material during those 25 minutes. Work until the timer alarms. Commit solely to this task and do not check your phone or the timer until the timer goes off. Once the timer alarms, take a 5-minute break. So stand up, stretch, grab a drink, do something relaxing to give your brain a rest. This 25-minute work period followed by a 5-minute rest equals 1 Pomodoro cycle and is 30 minutes in total. Repeat this process to complete 4 Pomodoros, which is 2 hours in total. Then take a longer break. So after 4 cycles, engage in a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes to recharge. At this time, get a coffee, go for a walk, get some fresh air. After this longer break, jump back into another set of 4 Pomodoros. It is important that you experiment with the length of your work and break intervals to find the rhythm that really works for you in order to be as effective as possible. This technique has been found to have great study benefits. Short bursts of mental focus followed by a break allows your brain to process and store information more effectively, which makes it easier to remember or recall material. The concept of working for just 25 minutes at a time makes starting the process less intimidating and feels more manageable, which reduces procrastination. It is also a very flexible and adaptable technique. You only need a short window of time and a timer of some sort to try it out. If the Pomodoro length of 25 minutes is too short or too long, adjust it to your liking. My last piece of advice around studying and preparing for exams is to put your blinders on and tune out the noise. I remember I would get to my nursing exam early and everyone would be asking each other, "Are you ready?" And, "Hey, did you study this random topic? I think it might be on the exam." And then, of course, conversations like that would just ensue panic. Now is not the time to throw out random topics that may or may not be covered. This pretest chatter that naturally happens in this environment is not helpful. If anything, it causes unnecessary added anxiety and therefore can be detrimental to your performance. My advice, don't get to the test too early and try not to engage in the non-productive pre-test conversations. And after the test, treat yourself to some needed self-care. Go for a walk, read a book, take a nap, take a complete mental break. I remember after nursing exams in college, me and my friends would talk very little about the test, and instead we would go have a picnic on our college campus or take a walk downtown. What is done is done. No need to dwell on what answers you chose versus what answers your friend chose. Give yourself some space from all things related to the test. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, don't forget to head to the show notes of this podcast episode to grab your study playbook free resource outlining the techniques and tips discussed in this episode so you can implement them into your study workflow. Well, that wraps up this episode. To recap, we covered a few study techniques and emphasized the importance of determining which method works best for you. Planning ahead is critical for success in nursing, so start at the beginning of the semester mapping out your schedule. Set boundaries in place, especially during the week leading up to the big test. Set yourself up for the flow state study session and try different study methods like the Pomodoro technique to help you avoid procrastination and study more efficiently. Lastly, do not get caught up in what your peers are doing. It is best to utilize study methods that serve you, not them, whether that is self-explanation techniques, retrieval practices, peer discussion groups, etc. So happy studying, said no one ever. Well, that's it for today's episode of Life After Nursing School. I hope you feel more confident and ready to tackle the challenges that come with starting your nursing career. Remember, the first year or two might not be easy, but with the right mindset, you can overcome anything. If you found value in today's episode, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Also, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps so much in reaching other new nurses like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, you've got this. Take care and see you next time.